Today we will tell you a very interesting story. We're going to talk about Tinky in prose. I do not know whether it is possible to talk about this phenomenon at all, but I will try to. Tengriism itself is a mysterious and little-known religion, movement or philosophy. As you can see, there are some ambiguities even in its definition. Biknur Kisikov, writer, author of numerous novels, stories, and poems, member of jury of literature contest, inspirer and organizer of Kitab Fest Festival, founder of Kazakhstan Encyclopedia Project, encyclopedia.kz. But people are usually drawn to the unknown. That is why Tengriism is not alien to us, the descendants of the ancient Turks, who once inhabited the Great Steppe. Echoes of the cult of heaven, earth, and the sun are still recognizable in some Kazakh customs. However, we are not religious scholars, so let's not go too deep into that. Up to this point, I have never had a chance of reading any fiction written in Tengrian style. I wasn't even sure whether this style existed at all. But having stumbled upon Tinkay Kretova's book, I unexpectedly discovered the world of Tengrian literature. And Tinky herself is an incredibly bright and talented representative of this genre. Frankly speaking, we all are Tengrians. I travel a lot, I meet a lot of people, and I have never met a person who lived outside the worldview of Tengri. If a person is inquisitive, if he seeks development, if he does not divide places of power or great personalities by faith, if he tolerates other people's religions, if he tolerates other people's points of view, if he is someone who is liberated inside, someone who knows how to be free, if you recognize yourself in what I just said, congratulations, you are Tengrian, even if you were not aware of this fact before. Tinkay is a pseudonym. It originates from the ancient Turkic name Tin, which, like the Kazakh ten, means equal or similar, and the author's real name is Tatiana. Tinkay grew up in a creative family. Her parents are publishers, and books of many Kazakh writers passed through their hands. For example, all of Olja Suleymanov's poetic collections of recent years. So from the very childhood, Tinkay was exposed to the greatest of books, and her path, even if it sounds corny, was predetermined. The writer calls herself a nomad and a traveler, and these are not just mere words, because she graduated from the university with a degree in tourism, meaning that Tinkay is a certified pilgrim. Tinkay Kretova is the author of many stories, essays, and short stories. She was awarded the Altyn Tobylgy 2016 prize for the story Kaztaban and Uly Dala, 2019 prize for her Kazakhstani story. Each of Tinkay's writings is woven from various impressions she gathered while traveling around Kazakhstan. And here, it is impossible not to notice how her experience is similar to that of another famous Kazakh writer, whom I once mentioned in our program. Of course, I mean Maxim Zverev, who has also been writing about our nature. Zverev's stories can be called the naturalist's notes clothed in the form of fiction, every line of which contains professional expertise of a scientist, an expert on the biological world of Kazakhstan. Tinkay's writing is different. There are no animals in her stories whatsoever, but there is a lot of geography, and the narration itself is more mystical rather than factual. In her work, she often introduces characters who are both eerie and compelling. Fantasy is one of the most popular genres of contemporary art. This is evident if we look at the multi-billion-dollar box offices, computer game ratings, and New York Times bestseller list. But what is the secret of its incredible success? Perhaps it is because almost any fantasy work is based on myths, legends, and tales of ancient times. Fantasy genre is an extract of all mysterious things that still excite our minds and our tribal memory. Therefore, there is little surprise in the fact that modern Kazakh authors try to write about it more and more. So we want to present to your attention the top 5 of the most interesting domestic literary works in the fantasy genre. The 5th place, Tonya Shipulina, and her teen fantasy work, Witch of the Country of the Mist. These are the stories of the girl named Yusin, who sees nightmares featuring ghosts. Once she attempts to draw her dreams, and suddenly those creatures materialize and drag her into the mysterious country of the mist. The fourth place, 2 graphic novels published by the Kazakh publishing house Han Comics, Erkitai and Tales. Both are dedicated to fantastic adventures in the real world and in the fairy tale. Third place belongs to Tinkay Kretova's Kaztaban. The work does not belong to a classic fantasy genre, but it possesses some strong features of the genre. This can be clearly traced in the storyline dedicated to Kiyal, who meets the great Tinky, Umay and Irlik, and passes a number of heroic tests. The second place belongs to the book called Resurrecting the Legends by Timur Yermashev. This is a historical fantasy featuring characters who find themselves in the past, joining the militia convened by Jahangir Sultan to fight against the Jungarian invaders. And the first place belongs to Ilmaz Nurgaliyev, who wrote Dastan and Arman, The Beginning and the First Task, a fantasy work based on the events that took place in the 7th century on the territory of the Western Turkic Haganat. The protagonist of the work, Dastan, is on his way to collect his bride, Armanay. However, the girl's father, who found a wealthier son-in-law candidate, is scheming to make Dastan abandon his lover. Well, let's turn to the story Kaztaban. Its name comes from the traditional Kazakh ornament. Kaztaban is a bird's or swan's footprint that looks different depending on the angle of view. Translated from Kazakh, tlek means toast or wish. In her writings, Tinky uses the names that speak for themselves. Tlek is a man of the material world and practical mind. He personifies everything earthly that in Tengriism is associated with the lower world. Tlek is Kazakh by birth, but he was born in Russia, right on the border with Kazakhstan. His foster parents are Russians. By the will of fate, our character ended up in Almaty. He worked as a photojournalist, and once he was assigned to photograph Pokpar. Once he came back to his homeland, he felt an inexplicable craving for these places. He was desperate to live here, at the foot of the Altyn Mountains. And he persuaded his retired parents to move to Almaty. Before graduation, I wasn't much interested in my native culture and did not even think about learning the Kazakh language. It was only after the first time I arrived in Almaty on business when I breathed in the exciting mountain air. I felt a pinch in my heart, and then while listening to the rare-spoken Kazakh language, I realized that I could only find myself on the land of my ancestors. Tlek immerses himself in the Kazakh environment. He begins to learn the language, traditions, and customs. He is keenly interested in everything that is connected with consanguinity. But he has a difficult time, as he does not know either his family name or the names of his ancestors, and he is worried sick about it. Another character's name is Kiyal. This guy is local. From the very childhood, he grew up in the village, but he is not a simple man. After all, his very name, which translates as fantasy, suggests that he is not quite from our world. And soon he proves this, exorcising the demon Shimurian, who used to knock travelers off the road. And then he fights against Albasti and Obirs. Also, he meets the mythical saint Kidir Ata. In general, he does everything to justify his own name. In Kiyal, the author introduces the world that is called Middle in Tengriism. This is the spiritual world. In it, all objects of the material world possess certain mystical reflections. And it is most likely that Kiyal mirrors Tlek while existing in a different, parallel reality. There's one more character. His name is Tanir. He is like a pure spirit, the highest state of a man, similar to divine consciousness. Manifestation of revelation is concentrated in Tanir. The air over the steppe became voluminous and fragrant. It was filled with youthful birds singing and the almost tangible matter of a renewed life. I finally realized what I wanted. Give me a chance just like this to see you every morning leaving the city. Let me see the lands that you warm, as many as possible, and let me get to know as many people you shine to as I can. Let me live in their favor too, I whispered to the sun, and its gentle waves enveloped me. Tanir, which means deity, embodies the upper world. This is a world of endless love and absolute harmony. Tanir is a synthesis and syncretism of both heroes, but he is the creature of the overworld. And each hypostasis passes through a series of meetings and revelations. Tlek travels to Mangishlak, visits the mosques of Chopin Ata and Biket Ata, and spends the night in the mystical tract of Bojira. He learns to understand his motherland, his people and thoughts that are being conveyed to him by fellow travelers. And most importantly, while he is visiting those sacred places, he immerses into the spiritual world even more, with his soul being his only guide. Meanwhile, in the middle world, Kial rides his winged horse to the West Sea. There he meets the ruler of the underworld, Erlik. Any sanctuary, Erlik says, will turn evil if it is filled with soulless people. Any rotten place will bloom if good people come to it. Tlek traveled almost the entire west of Kazakhstan and now is heading to the east of the country. In Altai, in the sacred mountains of Tengriism, the ancestral home of the Turks is located. This is the place where people were looking for mysterious Shambhala. This is the place where the Rorikites gathered, and there is little surprise that Tlek was drawn to this place. On his way, he meets the mysterious Matvey, a companion and a spiritual mentor. Matvey gives Tlek good advice. In my opinion, no one is ever good enough or completely ready. Fate just throws you the ball in the form of desire or opportunity to do something. You can either hit this ball, that is, fulfill your desire, or leave it until you figure out what technique is the best for hitting it. And fate, seeing that you're not doing anything, sends you the next ball so that you can finally throw away the previous one. Let it go. But you get away with that. Catch the second one, you catch the third. And then you are being too overwhelmed with the pile of your wishes and desires. Then you can no longer catch these balls, and they hit you on the head. Before you know it, you will not be able to move at all, buried under a load of unrealized plans. I think that if you can come up with something, that means you can bring it to life. There's no point in waiting for the right moment or perfect readiness. Kial got lucky too. After his long wanderings, he sees a phantasmagoric picture full of musical harmony. The great Korkit Ata and the legendary Asan Kaigi meet in an impromptu creative aitis, and they teach him a lesson too. And this is only a tiny part of the adventures that our characters were subjected to. But in the end, each of them will find what they were looking for, and finally, they will realize why they were born into this world. Sometimes in the descriptions of the protagonists of the story, we observe so many unrealistic and fantastic things that our mind refuses to believe it. But on the other hand, it's the spiritual path of the pilgrim where reality is blurred to an extent that it does not obey the logic of the physical world. And who knows? It may be that our reality is a fiction, and the truth, as the protagonist of the book says, is somewhere out there, in those forgotten valleys of ancient roots where we came from. This is the place people should explore in order to find the lost bond that linked us with nature. It is there that you can find yourself and your origins. The characters themselves go through a difficult path of their spiritual rebirth, where good and evil go hand in hand, and magical creatures reveal long-forgotten truth. And having finished their pilgrimage, they come back to their roots. And probably their path is the path that all of us should follow. After all, we all are looking for the truth, and we all are travelers too.